I swear I'm gonna murder someone. I don't know who. Probably whoever makes this microphone and Adobe. That's who I'm gonna murder. Both of them at the same time. That's who I'm gonna do it to. I am so angry at Adobe's just been fucking me around for hours. Um, let's see if it works now. No, no. If you tell me you're installing, it's like stuck at like 90%. Ah, it's been one of those days, I swear. You can hear me now. It's because when you open it in Gmail and Google Docs, it messes with your alignment of the questions that we've done today. And when you try to edit something out, it messes up all your like pages, and you can't read the questions and then the answer properly. I'm glad you didn't hear the first bit because I was just dropping just mad swear words for about 2 minutes. Like it was crazy. Like Adobe really can go and suck a D for sure. It's shit of software. Like, what are you downloading? I'm on a gigabit connection, you stupid thing. And I've got a SSD in here that'll run like lightning. Like, why does it take so long? It's been doing this for like 25 minutes, 30 minutes. This computer's lightning quick and we have gigabit internet. It should be like that. Oh, okay. All right. I'll deal with that in a minute. I'll need probably like 5 minutes to go and edit a few things because there was just a lot of like child witness stuff today, and I can't afford to get called up in court 3 days before a jury verdict. I don't want to be the reason we have a mistrial or something. So, how about I talk to you about the first bit of something interesting today? So, I got you something. I got my viewers something, and I think you might like it. Now, you may have seen this in a couple of other places, but we have our own copy of it. Our own. I own the rights to this. I pitched in with the other media companies, and I paid for the sketch artist to sketch a picture of Erin Patterson for us that while she was on the stand this afternoon. Here, let me grab it. If I know where it went. Here, is it that one? It is. Don't know why it says thumbnail, but it's something like this anyway. I'm sure I can get why is it giving me that copy? Hold on, guys. I'll get the full copy. Hmm. Okay. Oh, I see. Okay. Here you go. So I actually met the sketch artist today in court. So when we all found out that Erin was going to take the stand, um, we heard that there was going to be a sketch artist coming down to do this. So I got in contact with the pull media partner who's doing a lot of this type of stuff. I can't tell you who they are. All I can tell you is that through connections, I was able to get the right person's email, and I paid the rights to this. And I know that sounds weird. You're like, Ping, why'd you do that? Why don't you just steal it from the website? Well, I want to use it on the show, and I want to use it in our thumbnails for our podcast after the trial. And there's only two sketches that have ever been done at trial, the one in the first week and this one. No others have been done. So um, I paid a stupid amount of money for it. I'm not going to tell you how much it was, but it was more than you think it is. And hopefully using it in some media and podcasts and stuff will make that money back. But yeah, pretty cool. The artist, she's lovely. She's really nice, but I think we have to tell you her name. Uh, Anita Lester. Anita Lester is the artist that I met today. She's very cool. Saw her doing her work and got it done like pretty quick. She's pretty talented, I think. I couldn't do that. You get a stick figure on MS Paint. That's what you get. So yeah, yeah, that's pretty cool. So you might have seen this on a couple of media um, sites this evening, and it's because there's sort of only like one allowed, and then the media have to sort of all pitch in and then share. It's not like each media can have their own um, sort of like thing. It's only like one, and then we all have to share it. So yeah, we Knights with Ping were able to get our own copy, and we have the rights to it, and that is pretty cool. Yeah, it is. And I saw Erin on the stand today. I would say this is like I don't know anything about art, but I would just say it's a decent representation of Erin on the stand today. And I will go through that when Adobe hurries up and stops updating. How is it still at 90%? I'm gonna kill someone, I swear. Yeah. Slow or unstable backgrounds. I have fast internet. I don't know what you're talking about, Adobe. You're smoking crack, all right, Adobe? I don't think you know what you're doing. Let me see if I can get back into it. Uh, it's still telling me edit a PDF is getting installed. What? How does that even work? I'm gonna kill you. I really am. I'm gonna kill the people at Adobe. That's what I'm gonna do. I'm gonna kill them and then get my money back. Um, oh, yeah, crazy. So I'll run you through the event today, and hopefully it's done by then, and I can have just like 2 3 minutes just to edit out very quickly a couple of things, and then we can get through it. Um, the day still sort of started off very slowly. We had some more legal stuff going on in the background, and that sort of had to take precedent. And then we had Eppingstall, and Eppingstall came back, did his cross examination, and then the defense rested on like for him. They're just like, we're done, no more questions. And the prosecution re-examined him for a period of time. Then the prosecution closed their case. So their case is done. They are done. They are not going to be presenting any more evidence. It is all over to the defense now. And that is why we heard sometime today, I can't tell you when, that Erin was going to be taking the stand. And everyone's like, what's going on? But she did. It was late in the day, about 6. Oh, 6? No, it was about 3:30. We'd had just had a break. We get like an afternoon break, so we just had our afternoon break, and then when we came back, Aaron Patterson was on the stand, in the witness box, talking to the jury, answering her questions, and we got to hear. It's the most I've seen of her during the trial. I mean, I've seen her a couple of times here and there, but this is sort of the most I've seen her throughout the trial. And yeah, here you go. I can't give you anything else other than this. We're not allowed to. That's why we have a sketch artist. So um, this is what she looked like sitting on the stand. So there you go. She did. So she did. Maybe I can go through a little bit without incriminating myself. Let's see if we can do that. I swear, Adobe, how are you still on 90%? Like, upgrading key features, I'll upgrade you to deleted. Yeah, let me see if I can get out of it and get back into it. Will it do the IT thing? Just, restart it. That's how you fix things in IT. Let's see if this, uh, what? Are you kidding? Adobe just decided to start again at downloading stuff. I swear. Like, what is wrong with you, Adobe Acrobat or whatever? It just started again. It was at 90% and decided, well, we'll just start again. Oh my god. Let me see if I got my other notes. Maybe we can use them, but they're a little disjointed. Let me see. Just double check. Can't afford to go to prison. Wait, what did that say? No, that's okay. 21, 22, 23. All right, we might be able to use these other set of notes, but you got to understand the stupid freaking Google Docs makes it disjointed. So just double checking we don't have anything in here that we shouldn't have. I think it's okay. Yeah, let's go to the last one. Okay. All right. All right. I can use this, but you're gonna have to let me go slow because the stupid numbering and all my quotes are all over the place. Okay. We will do this until Adobe stops being the most broken software on earth. Adobe, stop charging people $32 a month for the biggest piece of crap software you can't even update and make run in under 10 minutes. Like, that just tells you you're a bloated company, doesn't give a damn anymore, and unfortunately, you're relying on it because there's, like, not much else that can, edit a lot of these documents. Like, you can try to do it in Google Docs, but it's not the same, and it messes up everything up. So, alright, enough bitching about enough bitching about Adobe, although I will do more later. Alright, so they ask her, she's on the stand. We come back from break, and she's sitting right there, probably the closest view any of us have had of her all trial. She's smack bang in front of the view that we get, and we see her sitting there, and they do what they do with everyone. So this is Colin Mandy. Colin Mandy, the defense, called his own client, Erin Patterson, and she gets affirmed, and then they start examining her. So an affirmation basically means it's just like you promise to tell the truth to the court, and it just yeah, basically it's just the same thing as swearing to God that you're going to tell the truth, but no deity is involved. That's basically the same thing. All right, let's go down. You guys want to hear about Erin Patterson? Fortunately, a lot of the first, like, 25 questions are all about her children. So I'm gonna move down to where I will go back to them. I wanna edit out names, that's it. But I just wanna give So Erin had this quote today. They were talking about the house that she built, and yeah, so they're asking, like, how did the planning, here. So she says that the children and her had moved in around June of 22, and she says so it was around 12 to 13 months to design and build that house. And they are and Colomandi asks her, "What role did you have in designing that house?" And she says, "Well, I was involved right from the beginning of the design, I suppose." And she says, Simon and I were involved through the whole design process, but I drew a design myself first. She says first in Microsoft Paint, and gave that to the building designer, and he said that will never work engineering wise. So she tried to design this building in MS Paint, gave it to the building engineer, and the building engineer went, I don't think this is gonna, don't think it'll, don't think it'll stay up. I think it may just fall over. And so they talk about here that after the building designer said that will never work engineering wise, he said, let's move it around a bit. But she says it's modeled quite closely on how I wanted things sorted out. And Colin asks her, "What were your plans for the house?" And she says, "I saw it as the final house," meaning I wanted it to be a house where the children would grow up, where once they moved away for uni or work, they could come back and stay whenever they liked, bring their children, and grow old there. That's what I hoped. And that was Erin's reply. And they ask her, "In the year that you had been living in that house, did you like living in that house?" And she says, "I really liked living in the house here." And they s- they say, "How was the garden when you moved in July of 2023? What had you done to the garden?" And she says, "So just maybe 6 weeks before I had landscaping finished," she said, "I had a complete design, I suppose you'd call it, of the garden around the house, and I got that installed. It took the best part of a month to do that." And they say, "In July of 2023, what were your financial circumstances?" And she says, "I was comfortable financially, such as I could afford to go to university and I didn't need to work a full time job at the same time." And they said, so Colin says, now that we've covered the good things in your life at the time, were there parts of your life that weren't so good in July of 2023? And she says, yeah, there was. She says she had felt for some months that my relationship with the wider Patterson family, and particularly Don and Gail, had perhaps become a bit more distant, or had more distance or space between us. We saw each other less, and she says, "I mean, partly it is a consequence of me no longer living in the same town as Don and Gail." And she says, I'd I'd started having concerns that Simon was not wanting me to be involved with the family too much anymore. Perhaps I wasn't being invited to so many things." And Colin asked her, "How was your relationship with Simon in July of 2023?" And she says, "It was functional. From the start of the year to July, we mainly just related on logistical things like church, the streaming, the kids, but we didn't do friend things like banter like we used to. That changed at the start of the year." So they're detailing how um, they were basically in just a co-parenting type relationship at that point. There was no more like, laughing and having fun and sort of, you know, joking with each other. It was just a functional relationship. Like you pick up the kids, you drop them here, I'll pick them up, you take them to the doctors, then you bring them back, that type of thing. I don't think like they were, you know, super friendly terms at the time, is what I'm trying to say. Yeah, here we go. Taz Devil. I can't bring that on the screen, but I'm guessing that might have gone both ways. I think that might have gone both ways. I think, it's possible that, you know, we she's detailing that her relationship with not just Simon, but the wider Patterson family seemed to have degraded during that period. So good work. And she says, no, that's not the right one, is it? Yeah. So they say, from the start of the year, she says, we mainly just focus on logistical things like church, the streaming, the children, but we didn't relate on friend things like banter like we used to. That changed at the start of the year. And they ask her, "How did you feel in July of 2023 about yourself physically?" And she says, "Not good." And they ask her, "Why?" And she says, "I've been fighting a never ending battle of low self esteem most of my adult life, and the further inroads I made into being middle age, the less and less I felt good about myself, I suppose. I put on more weight and could handle exercise less." And Colin asks her, "Was it principally a weight issue?" And she says, "Yeah, I mean, that was the large," and then she pauses and she says, like, I think she didn't want to use the word large in a weight conversation, so she tried to find a different word, and the different word she came up with was, "That was the bulk of it, yup." And Colin asked her, "Did you have plans to do anything about it to address the weight issue?" And she says, "I did." And Colin says, "But what were those plans?" And she says, "I was planning to have weight loss surgery. You know, is it gastric bypass? I was planning to do that." And Colin says, "So that's a snapshot of how your life was in July of 2023." And Erin replies, "Yup, that's fair." So there you go. They also talk about down here that yeah, I want to go back to the beginning. So yeah, they go back to the beginning of how Simon and Erin met. So we've heard Simon's evidence earlier, and we heard his what he had to say about this subject. Now we're getting to hear what Erin has to say about their relationship, how they met, what her memories are. That's what we're hearing here. Hold on. Sorry, I'm still congested. I think it's been running in the cold and going to the freaking hospital and stuff. Sorry about it. Sorry you had to hear that. See? Sorry. Bloody winter. Bloody winter down here. What do I say here? Yeah, we'll get back to it. Can you tell the jury how you met Simon? And she says, "We met because we worked at the same place. We both worked at the City of Monash Council offices in Glen Waverley." And they ask her, "What was your role there?" And she says, "I was employed by the RSPCA, and as part of that role, I was located at the City of Monash offices as an administration assistant." And they say, she says, "So the RSPCA had the contractor to deliver animal management services to Monash. As a part of that, they would supply two rangers and an admin officer, and I was the admin officer." And they say, "What was Simon's role at Monash?" And they say he was a traffic engineer. She says she believes at the time. Guys, hold on. Give me 1 second. All right. Sorry. I have to get a drink. All right. What else they say here? And they said, "How did your relationship commence?" And she says, "We had mutual friends, is how I remember it coming together. He was friends with people that I had become friends with. So we would come up against each other at lunch or after work drinks, that sort of thing." And then then Colin asks, "And what sort of activities did the group of friends do initially together?" And she says, "Initially, in 2003, it was really just lunch at work or after work drinks." And then Colin prompts her and says, "Okay, and what period are we talking about?" And she says, and he says, "I said, how did you meet Simon? When was that?" And she says, "That was 2003. 2003?" And she goes, "Wait, no, I beg your pardon. It was 2004, sorry." And then Colin says, "Okay, so 2004, you were both working at Monash City Council." And she says, "That's right." And then Colin says, "Now I understand from your evidence you were friends for a period of time." And she says, "Yes." And he says, "But before anything romantic happened." And she again says, "Yes." They ask her, "How long were you friends for?" And she says, "I would say we became friends around November '04, and we were friends only until July 31st, July '05. That's when we started dating." And they describe this as around 9 months of time between when they became friends and when they started being romantically involved is the word I guess we would use in this situation. Yeah. Yeah, and they say, "Yep." And they say, "When did you first meet Don and Gail Patterson?" And she says, "I met them in early '05." And she says, "As a part of these different friends, but in '05, Simon wanted to go camping so that every weekend in 2005, we had other friends, not Monash friends, that he would do that with. And I was included in that. And one of the trips we did was down to Currumborough in March of April of '05. We stayed at Don and Gail's house at the time." And Colomendi says, "And do you remember that trip?" And she says, "Yeah, I do. Yep." And they now ask her, "When you met Simon, what were your views about religion?" And she says, "I was what you would probably call a fundamentalist atheist. Like I was really very atheist." And Colin asks, "What was Simon's views?" And Erin replied very quickly, "Oh, he was Christian." And they say, "Erin, did your attitude change towards religion? Did she change her attitude towards religion?" And she says, "Yeah, it did." And they say, "When was that?" And she says, "Through the course of those 23 months between December '04 and January, February '05, we had a lot of conversations about life, religion, politics, and a lot of religion. And I was trying to convert him to being an atheist, but things happened in reverse, and I became a Christian." And they said, Colin asked here, "You said that you first met Don and Gail when you went on a trip to Currumborough." And she says, "Yep." And they said, "Did you go to church on that trip to Currumborough?" And she says, "Yeah, it was the first church service I'd ever been to." And Colin asked her, "Do you remember when that was?" And she says, "I think the closest I can say is March or April. I don't think it was Easter, so yeah." And Colin says, "That's fine, March or April. Do you remember the experience of going to that church on that occasion?" And she says, "I do. I remember being really excited about it because I'd never been to a church service before. I had been to my sister's wedding in church, but that was it. And I was really looking forward to it." And they ask her, "What church was it?" And she replies, "It was Corumburra Baptist Church." And they ask her, "What do you remember about the church service?" She says, "I remember that there was a banner up on the wall behind where Ian was preaching." And then they ask her, "When you say Ian, do you mean Ian Wilkinson?" And she says, "That's right. He was the pastor and he was giving a sermon that day and there was a banner. It could still be there." And they say, she says, "But it said, it has on it faith, hope, and love." And Ian gave a sermon talking about that. And there's a passage in the Bible that talks about faith, hope, and love. And the greatest of these is love. And I remember Ian giving a sermon on that. And then we had communion, which I was welcome to participate in. And Colin asked her, "What impact did that church service have on you?" And she says, "I had what at best can be described as like a spiritual experience. I'd been approaching religion as an intellectual exercise up until that point." And she explained it like, "Does it make sense? Is it rational?" And she says, "But I had what I would call a religious experience there." There. Sorry, my voice is going already. And it was she said it quite overwhelmed her. And Colin then says, "Now, in terms of your relationship with Simon, how did your relationship progress from about that time in '05?" And she says, "Well, we spent a lot of time together in groups. We did a lot of camping over those weekends through the first half of '05, and we spent a lot of time talking through those camping trips and became a lot closer." She says, "Through that time," yeah, just through that time. And then Colin says, "When did you become romantically involved?" And she says, "In July of '05." And Colin asks, "So from that time when you started dating, what sort of things did you and Simon do together?" And she says, "We continued to do a lot of camping. We had friends like this." They're saying that we had like she's saying they had a friend group that really liked to do camping. And she says, I remember it really was important to Simon that yeah. And they said Simon had become concerned that he'd become too work focused in a sense, and he wanted to make sure that he turned off or switched off and relaxed over the weekend. And camping was a function of that. And I always was welcome and usually went too. Um, then Colin says, "And what about church? Were you going to church then too?" And Erin replies, "Sometimes." So Simon was a member of a church in Melbourne, the Glen Era Christian Community Church. And I did go to that with him a few times. We also visited Don and Gail a few times in that year. And whenever we were down there on the weekend, we would go to Currumbara Baptist. And they asked her about her Bible study. What about Bible study? Did you go to Bible study? And she says, yeah, we did. I don't remember when it started, whether it was late '05 or early '06, but we started attending a Bible study with Simon's cousin and his girlfriend and two friends of Simon's from school who lived in Noira. And she says, so the six of us had Bible study the best part of the next 18 months, 2 years, I think. And they said, did your romantic relationship at some stage become an engagement? And she says, yes, we got engaged in Feb of '07. Hold on, guys. All right. Yeah, so they ask about her being, when did they get engaged? Engaged Feb of '07. Okay. Sorry, guys, give me a sec. Sorry, I don't know what happened there. I want to get back to my point. Okay. So they talk a lot about their relationship between Simon and Erin and here. Yeah, so she says we got engaged in February of '07. And then Colin asks, when did you get married? And she says in June of that year. And Colin asked, when you got engaged in '07, early '07, who were the first people that Simon told about the engagement? And she says his mum and dad. And Colin asks, where were Don and Gail living at the time? And she says they lived in Currumbara in a street called Range Court back in the day. And Colin says, okay, the jury might have heard some evidence about them living eventually at Range Court. That was a block next door, I take it. And she says, that's right. And she said they owned the block next door, built a house on it, then moved. And they said, Colin asked her, where were you living in '07? So she says, at the start of 2006, I moved to a little hamlet town called Almerda, not far from Currumbara, and I lived there through '06 until early '07. And Colin asks, so during that period, did you have much to do with Don and Gail? She says, yeah, I did. They would often invite me over for a meal, probably almost every month or monthly. And Colin says, with Simon? And she says, so, well, Simon lived up in Melbourne, like an hour and a half away. And if it was a weekend, then yes. But sometimes on weeknights, a handful of times, they did have me over for a meal. And they say, were Don and Gail planning to building, were Don and Gail planning on building a house in that Range Court at that stage? And she says, yeah. And Colin asks, were they engaging an architect to do that? She says, I don't know exactly that happened. I know that this is beyond what we are talking about now. She says, "But when Simon and I moved to Western Australia, they lived at a certain number, and when we moved back, they lived at a different number. So I'm not exactly sure what all happened, but it happened in that time." And they ask her, "Were you living in a rental in Alberta at the time?" And she says, "Yes." They said, "When did you and Simon get married?" She says, "June of '07." And they said, Colin asked, "Where were you married?" She says, "We got married in the Corranborough Anglican Church, a beautiful church." And Colin asks, "Is there a reason why you didn't get married at Corranborough Baptist?" And she says, "Yeah, we wanted Ian and Heather to be able to come and relax as guests rather than have jobs for the day like they would have if we got married at Corranborough Baptist." So they were trying to give them a day off, is what they're trying to say. It is cold in Melbourne. It is freezing right now, and it is June the 2nd. 2nd? Yeah, 2nd. So it is freezing down here at the moment, I'm telling you. You know, I just decided to have a break for like 2 seconds. Bloody Adobe is still stuck on 90%. Bloody Adobe, man. They say here, at the time in June of '07, where were your parents? And she says, in Russia on a train. And she says, Colin asks her, on holiday? And she says, yeah. And Colin asks, who was it who walked you down the aisle? And she replies, David Wilkinson. So a family member in the Wilkinson family. All right, hold on. All right, sorry about that. My congestion is just playing up. And they say, you mentioned David Wilkinson before. Who is he? And she replies, it's Ian's son, Simon's cousin. And Colin goes, after you and Simon were married, where did you live? And she says, so Simon was living at the time in a unit in Clayton and Clayton slash Oakley. And she says, not exactly sure what the suburb name is. It was a unit owned by Don and Gail that all their children had lived in through their university years. And she says, Simon was living there at the time of our marriage, and I moved into there with him for a month after our wedding. And they ask her, what happened after that month? And she says, so we immediately after our wedding, we had a long weekend in Olinda. That was the honeymoon. But what we really wanted for our honeymoon was to drive around Australia. So Simon gave notice at his job. We gave everything away, everything we had, sold Simon's car to Ian and Heather, and bought a Nissan Patrol, and we just hit the open road. And Colin asked her, well, where did you go? And she says, first to Sydney. Simon had friends there that he wanted us to stay with, so we did that. And then we slowly meandered our way across Australia, but through the, like the far west, Birdsville, Udnadada track. And she says, the guts of it, really. And they said, where did you end up? She says, we ended up in Perth around September of '07. And Colin asked her, did you settle in Perth? She said, we did eventually, yeah, but we first went over to Africa for a couple of months. And Colin asked her, where did you go in Africa? She says, we landed in South Africa. We went to Botswana to visit some of Simon's relatives. And then we went to Zimbabwe to visit a friend of his. And we went camping in Namibia. And then Colin asked her, did you get back to Perth at the end of '07? Something like that. She says, yep, about then. And then he says, what did you do when you got back to Perth? And she says, when we got back to Perth, Simon was pretty keen to keep traveling, and I was keen to stop for a while and put down some roots. I was keen to start having babies, I guess, for want of a better phrase for it. So we did. And they said, "In '07, you were 33 or thereabouts." And she says, "Correct." And they said, "So did you settle down and put roots in Perth?" And she says, "Yeah, we did. Simon got a job very quickly at an inner city shire council in Perth. We rented a house about 40 minutes south of Perth near the beach. I applied to go to university, and then I got pregnant March, April of '08." All right. Unfortunately, I have to stop there because the next bit is all baby names and baby did this and baby did that and you know baby did this and went here and that's the bit I need to edit out because I am unable to tell you anything about it, unfortunately. I know that's really frustrating, um but it's a legal requirement under the law. Can't name juvenile witnesses. You're not allowed to do that. So, and the penalties are severe. So, and yeah, I don't really want to invite any evil right now, with everything going on. There's not a ton left, in her thing. I don't think. Let me just have a quick look without talking to you guys. It's like she talks about the birth of her children, and she says that she had um, a traumatic birth with her first child, and she says that Don and Gail were the first visitors who came over to see their first child that was born, and she said they came over very, very quickly. She says that apparently, when she gave birth to that first child and then came home, Don and Gail actually came and stayed with her for about a week and tried to help her out and, sort of lend a hand. She was a new mom, probably very scared at the time. I'm sure a lot of, first-time moms are pretty scared. So, yeah. Hey, Profiler. Good to see you. Hey, my friend. Hey, Insightful One. Good to see you guys. Um, Let me just have a quick scan through if there's any. Yeah, so yeah, Don and Gail went and helped them and tried to support them by. They had children, four of them. So Don and Gail, Ian and Heather. So Heather is Gail's sister. Both of them had four children, not too far apart from each other either. And it's interesting how that works sometimes, right? So yeah, they had quite a lot of children in the family, so maybe that's why they felt it was important for them to come down and sort of help Erin as a new mom, especially after she detailed this traumatic birth that she had with their first child. She says that it was like an emergency C-section and the baby was in distress and it was a really traumatic kind of birth for that child. So pretty brutal. And she says that apparently Gail gave her a lot of advice. Let me read stuff before I say things. I think that's a great way to do things about this. They ask they ask her, "How were you getting on with Don and Gail during that week that they stayed with you to help?" And she says, "I remember being really relieved that Gail was there because I felt really out of my depth. I had no idea what to do with the baby, and I was not confident. And she was really supportive, gentle, and patient with me." And then Colin asks her, "Did she give you advice?" And she says, "She did." And they said, "What kind of advice did she give you?" And I have to read this very slowly, so please forgive me. After helping settle him after a feed, and she says, about trying to interrupt his cries, she gave me good advice about just relax and enjoy it. You don't have to stick to a timetable or a schedule. Just relax and enjoy your baby." That's what Gail told her in the week after their first child was born. So there you go. Um, Adobe, shut up. Can you believe that thing is still sitting on 90%? Crackhead of a software. All right, let's go. Okay. So there's only about 2 paragraphs left, and what they go into is their time, very briefly about traveling around WA, and, Erin details this trip and how by the time they got up really far north, she was sort of over it. She was sort of sick of it. She was like, "I'm a new mom. I'm sorta over it. I just wanna go, not be lying on the floor of a camping tent with a child in the outback." She's like, "I wanted to be in a proper accommodation." She's like, "I wanted to have a home." So, she explains that's why she left Simon when they were I can't remember the town, hold on. We have to be factual, people. What is the town they were in up north? Ah, so they were up and around Alice Springs, Tennant Creek, and they went across the Queensland and up. They went across to the Queensland coast and up right to the top, and then again to Cairns and Townsville. And she just said it had been a good holiday, but I'd had enough. I wanted to sleep in a real bed, and it was getting harder to camp with the child. When we started off, he was 3 months old. He slept a lot, and I remember joking at the time, I couldn't remember seeing his eye color because his eyes never opened, like he slept a lot. And she says, "So, when we first started traveling, we could time our long drives with these 3-hour naps that the child had. But by November, the child was sitting up and crawling and trying to stand and not sleeping as much. It was a lot harder, and I'd had a gutful of it." She says, "I talked to Simon and we came to an agreement. The agreement we came to was that I flew back to Perth and Simon followed with the child in the car." And she says she made it back pretty quick. Uh, and she says for Simon to get back, it was about a week, 5 to 7 days or something like that. And apparently, she had rented a little cottage for her and the child to live in, and Simon rented an on site caravan close by. Colin says, "We have heard evidence that there were periods of separation. Was this one of them?" And she says, "Yeah, it was the first one." And they ask, "How long did you live separately like that for?" She says, "Not very long. It was only 2 or 3 months. It was the separation was over by the end of January 2010." Um, all right. I'll read this bit actually. She talks about how in these separations, the way she thinks about it with children, okay? And she says here, um, what was some of the tension? There must be some tension to cause the separation. Yeah, so Colin asked her, there must be some tension to cause the separations. And she says, yeah, of course there was. And Colin asked, what was that about? She says, primarily what we struggled with over the course of our relationship, if we had any problems at all, it was that we couldn't communicate. very well when we disagreed about something. We could never communicate in a way that made us each feel heard or understood. So we would just feel hurt and not know how to resolve it. And Colin asked her, but that kind of tension didn't extend to how you looked after the child. And she says, no, it didn't, because we both just loved him. And she said, uh, didn't want him to. They were adult problems. They were not problems for a child. I did it. I I did it without having to edit the document. So I'm very happy because I got through it. Yay! Good work, Ping. I had to literally. Did you see what I was doing? Every time a name would come up, I'd have to put my finger on the screen, like directly on the screen, and then like read around it and put in other things. That's not how I like to do things because it's so easy to say dumb things, especially if you've been in court all day and heard hours and hours of audio and stuff where, and video, and you hear these names over and over and over and over again. They get stuck in your mind a little bit. And even if you don't mean to, it's very easy to slip up and say very stupid things. So, yeah, I was like, I'm just going to put my finger over it and then I'm just going to read it and replace it with, the child or something. It's worth protecting those children. I am fully on board with that. I think it's children can't help the families they're born into, especially when they end up in a high profile trial of some sort, right? It's not their fault. And I think as media, we should do the best we can to try and protect them because they are innocent people in all of this. And I truly believe that 100%. I've tried to do that through the trial as best as I can. And, yeah, so that was it. It ended after that. After that, we got kicked out of court, and they were like, "We'll see you tomorrow." And we're like, "Alright, we'll day 25? Sure, we could do that. We could do you really want us to come back tomorrow?" And he's like, "Yeah, it's tomorrow's day 25. We got stuff to do. We got more Erin Patterson on the stand tomorrow." We're like, "Alright, we'll be there." So Stacy. Is Stacy still here? Yeah, Stacy, did you see it? Yeah. Yeah, there you go. We own the rights to this photo and the artistic impression. Ping purchased the rights to it. So we can use this on thumbnails and I can post it on my Twitter if I want to. I just got to give you the artist name. I was told that we have to tell you who the artist is, and I may have to put like a little thing if I use a photo, just like say the artist is this person. Lovely lady. Met her today. What a sweetheart. Really, really lovely person. I got to meet her. She's very sweet. Let me see. By the way, I called a very important person today by a completely different name in an email trying to set this up. So that's always fun. That's always fun when you're meeting someone for the first time who's a high ranking individual in a mainstream media organization. And no, like really high. I don't know how high his job is, but it's pretty big. And when you have the word chief in your title, it's not like you're working on the call center. And he has a name. I'm not going to tell you what his name is. I'm not going to tell you what channel he works for either. But he has one of those names where if you substituted just one letter, it's a different name. And I did that in my very first email to him, and I had to send him an apology and say I was very sorry. And yeah, I just had to say I was very, very sorry, and I was very embarrassed that I didn't get his name right. Because it was a first email. It was like an introductory email, and I don't know why I quoted the wrong name, but I had his name in my freaking list, in my email list, and I don't know, just I was at the hospital, maybe I wasn't concentrating, and, so I felt bad. Mike Bell says, "I forgive you." Well, do you work for a multinational news agency? Taz says, "Probably don't apply for a job with him then." No. Although he was very polite, very polite. I brought it up and apologized, and he didn't even acknowledge it. So he was very professional. That was very kind of him not to make a big deal about it, and I appreciate it. I do. I appreciate it. So if he, for some reason, sees this and he wants to check in and see if I'm using the photo, um, but yeah, uh, says excellent job getting the sketch. Yes, I hope over some time we will make the money back on it. Uh, if I told you how much this costs, I think you would all spit out your coffee. I don't think I'm allowed to tell you how much it costs, but I can tell you that it's more than you think it is. And so whatever amount you have in your head, it's more than that. So I don't know how much you're thinking in your heads right now, but I guarantee you it's more than that. So, yeah, I don't know if I'd ever do it again, because of the price of what it is, but I thought because this will be the only one, most likely from the trial now, I thought it would be a good thing to a good thing to have and, for us to be able to use it in future podcasts or whatever, so yeah, I think so too. It is a really good sketch. It's I wouldn't say it's better than the first one, I'll just say different. There was one in the first, day or whatever it was too, but, yeah, th this is very similar to what she looked like on the video, very similar. Um, yeah, that's what she sorta looked like on the stand, so pretty cool. Yeah, I'm not gonna be applying for any jobs with, that particular news agency either. No, no, they were very polite, very, very nice people. The only reason I got that was I got Ping has connections now. Ping has connections to people. I have connections. So I asked one of my connections, I was like, "Hey, how do I get into this?" And they're like, "Leave it with us. We'll make that happen." And they did. I got a another email a few hours later and they're like, "Get in touch with this guy." And I was like, "All right." So that's how it works now. Ping has all the high level connections that I say their names wrong in emails. Yeah, I think it's pretty good. Yes, that is Erin Patterson. Yes. 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 Yes to this. Yes. Talented artist. Yeah, she is very, very nice. Lovely lady. Came in the afternoon when Erin, was on the stand and did her job, and I actually saw a early version of it, very briefly while she was working, and, I I I hope one day she had a different version. I'm not sure if I'm allowed to tell you what it looks like. I'll just say that she had a slightly different version, and they're both impressive for what she did. She's a great artist. Yeah, let me give you out her name again because I think we're supposed to do that. Her name is Anita Lester. Anita Lester. I looked her up actually. She's done some acting and some stuff like that. So maybe you might know her. So there you go, Anita Lester, and there you go. That is the artist that drew this sketch that we now have the rights to use on this channel. So that is pretty cool. Yeah, because I didn't get the original one. The one we had for week one, I wasn't involved in, and then I thought I was talking with Mrs. Ping about it, and she's like, "It's a lot of money for a sketch," and I was like, "Well, we may never do this again, you know? We may never do this ever again." And I was like, "Well, if I buy the rights to it, then I can use it in the future after the trial." And Mrs. Ping's like, "Are you sure? You sure you wanna spend that type of money?" And I was like, "Well, we're never gonna do this ever again. Not for this, or I don't know, we might, but I mean, this trial will this particular one will never happen again." So, it's been such a huge process, been to every day of court, followed it since day 0, and I was like, "Well, it'd be a nice memento as well to have." So yeah. Yeah, thank you to Anita. She's she's lovely. Nice lady. I spoke to her for, like, 2 seconds. We were talking about something, it was something related to this, and I think someone was trying to help me, and she's like, "Oh, I just do the work. It's not my thing. I don't work with the media or whatever." She's like, "I just do the artist stuff," and she's like, "I can't help you." But she's lovely. Lovely, lovely girl. So, and she's amazing. Look at this artistic representation. So that's all you get. That's all you get. You weren't at trial and you're not in the courtroom, then this is all they allow. One sketch, one, and every media agency gets the same photo. That's it. So it's a media pull photo. So sketch. Sorry, artistic courtroom sketch. So yeah, pretty cool. Um, I think that's it. I really do. I think that's about it. There was a little bit of cross exam of Epping stall earlier today. I think it's been covered extensively. I've seen a lot of coverage on it. I mean, if you want me to do it at some point, I will. Like I said, when we get out of the trial, I'm going to be going back over all of this anyway, and a lot of little bits that I've sort of skipped over or whatever. We'll go back over it. There's a 10-part podcast that is coming. As soon as we get a verdict, you'll get episode 1. So episode 1 will be, I think, the day after the verdict, something like that. It's very soon after the when we get a verdict in the case, and there's a lot to go through. A lot. You guys don't understand how much stuff there will be. Um, this sort of reading of what happens in court every day is about, I don't know, it's probably like only about 50%. There's another 50% of stuff that we describe to you, but you don't see it. And we'll see what happens, but I will make an application to try and get that content. So we'll see what happens with that. I don't know what you're doing. I don't know what you're up to. What is censored? Who's getting censored? I don't know, my friend. Our Adobe never updated. It just never updated. Hopefully by tomorrow it'll be. Oh, did I just close it again? Adobe, one day I will have my revenge. Did it finish? Oh, you mother effer. It didn't. It's now gone back to 8% again. I'm just going to leave it open all night and we'll see what happens in the morning. Hopefully it's finished by the morning. I think that's it. What I'm going to do is I'm going to, I don't have much time. I'll close this one. I'm going to open up another one very quickly and I'm going to cover Elisa. She was found today. Not found. Well, she handed herself in. So I want to talk about it very quickly, but I want to close off the Erin Patterson thing so we're not polluting two different stories. So what? I don't know. Just SMS it to me. What? I what? I don't know what she's talking about. I don't know what you're talking about. I don't know what's going on. I don't know. Yeah, it sounds like you're having some sort of You should try turning it off and back on again and see if that helps. Try turning the comment off and then back on again. Yeah, thanks so much. Hey, I love you, guy. I'll be on the stream in about 5 minutes, okay? And we're gonna talk about Elisa being found because we've got some stuff to talk to you about. There's some comments that came out about that girl, and we have to go over them. So I'll see you in about 5 minutes, okay? Love you all. That's day 24. It's in the books. We're done. Day 25 tomorrow. Peace out. Nights with Ping. Hey, if you haven't subscribed to the channel, you want to hear more of this kind of detailed court coverage that you're not going to get anywhere else. No one is going to go through this amount of court documents for you. I will, but you're going to have to hit that subscribe button. I would appreciate it. And to all the new people, I see you all. I see you in my little list I get. So we get like a little list that tells like who subscribed recently and that. So I see you all. I see you out there, the people who hit that button. Don't think that I don't see you. I do. I do. Even if you can't come into the chat, I still see it. All right. I love you all. Peace out. 5 minutes. Bye.